Review of the M14 rifle as produced by Bula Defense Systems. This is their USGI model. They make many different types of M14 type rifles, since the original one was a select fire and this is not. They make heavy target versions, some with machined in, built-in Picatinny rails on top. Some the entire sight area is completely missing. Instead it's got custom machine shaped receiver on the top, Picatinny rails. I'm going to talk about the accessories really quickly so I can get them off the table and have room. The USGI version comes with an original M6 bayonet. This one's made by Imperial. Very common. Looks blemished, but that's just, you know, add a little oil on that. I haven't oiled it up or anything, so it needs to be oiled up anyway so the oil can soak into the parkerizing. But comes with a bayonet. I thought I already had one of these. Turns out I had one on another M14 style rifle that I sold. So initially I thought, yeah, okay, whatever, bayonet, I've got one of those. Actually I didn't. So glad to have that. Of course, it comes with one magazine, which is incidentally marked with their logo, Bula, but it is a Checkmate magazine, which Checkmate's the current DoD supplier of M14 magazines. I've had many of those over the years. They make very good magazines. A lot better than chasing down expensive, possibly worn out USGI mags from the past. It comes with a sling. You'd be hard pressed to tell that's reproduction. I forget which company they buy these slings from, but they make M1 Garand slings, and this is their copy of an M1 Garand sling. It comes with a tool, and this is an original tool. Is that made in April of '68? Combination tool. I'm not opening this yet just because it's kind of neat having something like that in the wrap when I already own one, but that's what the combination tool is. You know, you would screw that onto the cleaning rod so that's your handle for the cleaning rod. Got a lot of different uses. There's a wrench for putting on taking your gas plug off. Takedown tool for disassembling your bolt. A couple other uses I don't remember. Anyway, handy tool to have, but I already have one. This is combination oiler, greaser, I don't know. I assume it's original. Who's going to take all the time to make a reproduction of that? You know, grease and oil. Usually you see these are yellowed with old oil. Chamber brush, bore brush, and this packaging said deluxe cleaning kit. Not sure what that Delrin ring is, other than probably meant to, I don't know, be some kind of muzzle protector maybe, I don't know. Neat to have. I have one of these, the original ones. Anyway, I didn't buy the USGI version for the accessories. Compared to the price of their regular basic GI type rifle, the price difference isn't worth it for the accessories. Well, I bought it because of the barrel. Almost all M14 type rifles now come with a 1 and 10 inch twist, non-chrome lined barrel from Bula anyway. And this has a 1 in 12 hard chrome lined GI contoured barrel that I have it on pretty good authority they make themselves. they're very cagey about what all they make. They do say that they're a DoD supplier and that they make some parts for the M14, for the DoD, and a lot of other weapons parts for the DoD. I mean, it is Bula Forge. Bula Forge, as far as M14s, they got their start making forged, milled receivers for James River Armory. When James River Armory came out with the Rockola brand, they bought the trademark Rockola and started manufacturing M14 stamped Rockola. The receivers were produced by Bula Forge, and Bula started making their own bolts and then their own op rods, and pretty soon they were making a lot of parts. Again, a little cagey about what parts they make. I know on this rifle they made the receiver, the op rod, the bolt, the trigger group complete, the gas cylinder, the gas piston. That much I know for absolute certain. I don't know if they make any of the sheet metal parts like the stock ferrule there. I don't know if they make the flash hider. I've read somewhere they did. I don't know. I don't know if it's forged. I know the gas cylinder is forged. They make a cast and a forged one, but the forged one actually has a movable gas spindle, where the cast version is just cosmetic. It's cast in place. I don't know about things like their rear sight knobs. They're unmarked. Don't appear to be USGI in terms of, they don't have any markings on them, the manufacturing marks. Rear sight base, I don't know. I'd like to get a list from them sometime to see, but we're going to do a closer examination. I'm taking this to the range tomorrow. It hasn't ever been shot yet by me, so without further ado, we'll break it down. I don't like to pull on those too hard because you get ahead of yourself and you end up jerking too hard on the handle and can ding up your spline. I like to keep that nice and tight. Well, I guess we'll go part at a time. This is, they manufacture a forged trigger housing. If you want their forged trigger housing, I think you've got to add another $250, $300 some dollars to the base price of this rifle, which is already pricey. It takes a long time to save up for something like this. And with me, I always end up having to sell things. So this is a cast. It's their cast trigger housing, but it looks good, and it's theirs, and it's marked, Bula. I've read that DoD even changed the drawings to allow, metallurgically, to allow the trigger housing to be a cast component instead of making it be forged, but not a super highly stressed part. It basically holds the trigger and hammer and everything in place, and the barreled action to the stock. I thought would be, a lot of guys that make M14 type rifles, James River, Fulton Armory, all those guys, Springfield Armory for the longest time. I mean, there were so many GI parts floating around. Basically, they made the receiver and then they fit a bunch of USGI parts to it. Springfield Armory casts a lot of stuff. This is Bula's own hammer. I don't know if you can see the end of their logo there. I think it's a forged part. Don't know why it would be a cast part. It's a good looking hammer, and I think they make their trigger. I don't know about the spring housing there. The safety is obviously a cast part, and again, I've read that was also another change, that they allowed it to be a cast part. The DoD did, because it's not subjected to the kind of stress where forging would matter. And of course the trigger guard is a stamping. That's trigger housing, trigger group. All right. Fair's fair. I've had this apart. In fact, I actually made another video and the camera had issues. When I made that other video, it was more or less an unboxing. And one thing I did notice, the only thing I can really fault them for, is the rear sight screw was thumbnail tight. It was kind of floating around in there, and that meant that you could turn the windage to the right. You could turn it clockwise and it would move the base, and if you turn it counterclockwise, it just wanted to unscrew. So I did have to tighten that up, but it works fine now. But that's, just to be fair, as received, that one screw was loose. All right. And I also noticed that the action's very tight in the stock. It's kind of hard to get out, which for me, good thing. I like it to be tight. The stock, a lot of guys on the forum talk about, oh yeah, they got really nice stock. These Boyd stocks are really, really good. I don't think that's Boyd's. If you look at any photographs of a Boyd stock, this area right here is a lot more muted. This looks a lot more to me like a DuPage Trading Company stock. Also a good stock manufacturer. So that's what I suspect. I don't see markings identifying the stock maker. I just see there's a date in here that it was manufactured in October of 2021. So that's all I know about the stock. But it's nice and tight. It's a good looking walnut. I don't know who manufactures this butt plate assembly. If that's, there's a lot of old stocks floating around. I don't know if they recondition original or if they manufacture that part. I don't know. Good looking though. Well, this whole rifle looks brand new. As it should, it's basically brand new. All right, so set the stock aside. One thing that excited me is how well the op rod aligns with the gas cylinder. I've had what did I have? Federal Ordnance was my first M14 I ever had, and that cast receiver that had a bad reputation, but it was a darn good rifle. It was all USGI parts. Should have hung on to that. Got it a long time ago. And I've had an LRB that I bought as a barreled action, and I put it together with USGI parts. I had a couple of minor issues with it before I got it working really well. I ended up selling it when it got tight. I've had two Rockolas. I had Rockola number 12, which had a little bit of teething issues. It was so brand new. Got it working great, and eventually sold it to, there's a guy with a YouTube channel called Corn from a Jar. He's made several M14 videos, and he uses that rifle. He owns it. I had Rockola, another early one, number 175. That was a good rifle. And I even had a Springfield Armory made in 1998. Cast receiver, but the rest of the balance was all USGI. Anyway, I don't recall any of them having the alignment as well as this op rod is aligned to the gas cylinder. And where that can make a difference, I know on at least one of those rifles, it may have been the early Rockola, maybe it was a Springfield, I don't remember. But I had bought a Sadlac National Match Spring Guide, which is a little bit, it's rounder, usually a little smoother operating, but it's also wider than the flat sheet metal type. And because the alignment of the op rod to the gas cylinder on the rifle, I tried to put it in, again I don't remember who exactly, it would bind up. As you pulled the op rod to the rear, it was off enough that it didn't have enough width, and it would bind up right there. Couldn't use it. Couldn't use it at all. So, there's that. And it's kind of neat to me. Some people might call this a defect. I don't. But it's always neat to me when I see this. An artifact of the forging process. They forge these gas cylinders. You see this rough surface and you see the bottom. Sometimes you'll see a gas cylinder where this is all machined. They have to machine the bottom of this, and it ends up all machined flat. But this, because there's not a void you can necessarily say, but once they forged the part, this part here on the bottom wasn't proud enough to get machined off. That's just an artifact of the forging. I like it. I had an M1 Garand. That used to happen to the M1 Garands. Sometimes they would, around the very front of the receiver, you would see that kind of surface, and instead of being a perfectly round area, sometimes it would start to go around and then it would kind of flatten off and be rough there where there just wasn't enough metal there to machine off. I like that. So, utilizing a flat, heavy gauge sheet steel spring guide. I think the GI versions, at least the ones I'm more familiar with, are perforated with slots. That really does nothing, I guess, than decrease the weight. This is perfectly serviceable. I'll probably see if we can't replace it with that Sadlac, see if it works. Just because I remember paying, some money for that thing and never got to use it. All right. Standard GI spring. Now, this op rod is tight. I always had a GI op rod of some kind. Varying states of wear because they were pulled off of rifles. And they always wobbled a lot. You really can't. This doesn't really wobble. Which means that tab that rides in the slot on the side of the receiver is full original thickness. I got one other forged one-piece op rod. There was that company, I forget the name of it. It was just an acronym, a three-letter acronym in South Korea that made them. They were very nice, and that was the only forged op rod you could get for a while that was new, one piece. I still have it. Thought I'll put it on a rifle someday. But these are good op rods that Bula makes, and it's a Bula op rod. They're two-piece, like most of the GI ones. Harrington and Richardson and Winchester, their op rods were two-piece. Just like the M1 Garand's op rod was two-piece. Got the dogleg version, and then it's welded onto a tube. TRW, Thompson Ramo Woolrich, which people consider the best maker of the M14s, the GI M14s back in the day, they made one piece. Sometimes these will separate. They separate on GI versions. I heard one Bula guy saying his separated. They took care of them right away. Sent him brand new, and it was very nice. Theory being that maybe a little bit of machine oil got smeared onto or accidentally transferred onto the metal, getting welded there, and it didn't take. But it's two-piece. Top's right there. It's welded on. And there's some roughness, some spalling. I'm sure that's where they clean up the weld after they weld it. I don't anticipate any issues with this at all. To give an indication of how tight this is, usually you pull the op rod back to the dismount spot and it just almost falls out of its takedown position. That's nice. That's how much force it takes to take it out of its dismount notch. That is tight. So if you've got an M14 with old GI op rod and you always wondered what do the new tabs look like, well, that's what a new tab looks like. This area here. And that's their grease. I don't have any more of that white lithium grease. Any grease I put on is usually Mobil 1 or something. That's what I've got right now. I think they make their firing pins. I know they make their extractor. I think they make all the parts of the bolt. But it's a good looking bolt. I've seen some early Bula bolts. Somebody mentioned that they had, they were good bolts, good forged, strong bolts. Somebody had mentioned, yeah, some of them have machine marks on them that are more prominent than other makes of bolts. Because LRB, I think, makes a bolt or has a bolt made. But And Springfield Armor Inc. is now making forged bolts. They had some cast ones, but they broke. It's very smooth. Reminds me of any old well-made USGI bolt. Second roller. I want to put a little bit more grease on that before I install it, since I've handled it a couple times. Their gas piston is dark. Now this is traditionally a stainless steel piston, and I do not know how they finished this. I don't think they just used carbon steel and blew it or something. I mean, I'm sure it's stainless steel, and I have read somebody say that they think they nitrided them. I don't know. Some of the parts here, it almost looks like the gas cylinder. It doesn't look like it's paint or any kind of finish. It almost looks like it was nitrided or something. Just, you know, you do a good job nitriding stainless, it turns it black. I don't know. The gas plug looks to be USGI gas plug. It's got a little bit of high edge where like it was new old stock, or just about new old stock. I don't know about the stripper clip guide. Slightly different shade of parkerizing on that. The receiver itself almost doesn't even look parkerized. It's got such a smooth finish on it. You would almost think it was blued. I'm sure it isn't, but yeah, one departure that they make from a lot of other people that would say ours is a USGI identical receiver is the hole in the receiver leg. The USGIs did have a hole in the right side of the receiver leg, about big round as a pencil, number 2 pencil. I've heard some people say, well, that was because it was there because it was to hold it in place in a fixture during the machining. Other people said, no, it was just used to hang it when they parkerized them, which doesn't make any sense because there's plenty of other holes that you can hang the part from. So I think it was some sort of alignment in a fixture that is not used in modern manufacturing. So they saw no reason to include it, and it's buried in the stock for the most part. I think LRB's current receiver does have that hole, and they even make a big deal. It's even mentioned. Ours even has the hole. So if you have to have a hole in your receiver leg, I know that the ones that they made for Rockola, I think they include that hole. And I think they've had some other, I've seen some stuff where they'll list one of these strip receivers for sale and it had a hole. I don't know if that's something they quit doing or it depends on the version. I don't know. Interesting. I like the contours of this receiver. The only blemish that I found on it that you could call a blemish isn't anything that matters. There's a couple little dings on the heel right here. Almost looks like it's almost as deep as the serial number stamped. Obviously it was done before heat treating. It was done before finishing. They're absolutely perfectly spaced. I don't know how they got there. Maybe these are, as they're finished, as they're serial numbered, they get tossed into a bin and one of them knocked against the other one, or where those come from. Doesn't diminish from it. All right, Handguard, last of all. I don't think anybody manufactures a reproduction fiberglass handguard. These are some kind of composite, they say, plastic. And plastics have advanced to the point where they, I'm sure they're good heat resistant. I mean, you look at the M16, the original handguards tended to crack, and buttstocks crack, because they were made out of a fiberglass type material. They were brittle. This is much more pliable and probably very heat resistant and handsome to boot. I have a new old stock USGI slotted fiberglass one. They quit using these for two reasons I understand. One, because the heat coming out of the holes could give you a heat mirage. Because of their holes, it took away some of the strength. I had some before that were all cracked up. I'm tempted to just shoot it like it is, just to see, hey, how well does it mitigate the heat? And all right, so be it. I'm taking it to the range tomorrow. If I'm going to review it, I need to review it as provided. So put this on another time, perhaps. I'm curious to see if that Sadlac spring's going to interfere with anything, that spring guide, like it did on another rifle of mine. So Sadlac National Match Spring Guide. And looky there. Perfect. But it's a review. Wouldn't be fair to Bula or you, the viewer, if I didn't shoot it as is. These stock ferrules here, this sheet metal, after the rifles get some wear on them and stuff, they can get kind of loose. And as the rifle heats up, it probably will get a little bit loose. But it's just held in place by a boss here, a raised area of the barrel. It's pushed back and held in place by the gas cylinder. They get loose, they get rattly. And part of the national match tuning of these was to unitize, it's called unitizing the gas cylinder. They permanently or semi-permanently attach this sheet metal to the gas cylinder so it can't move around. And theoretically the whole action returns to the same place every time instead of being allowed to wiggle any. They do that by either welding or what they call the screw and glue method. Screw and glue method destroys you end up drilling right through the spindle valve. It destroys that. The Marines like to weld them. The Army like to do the screw and glue method. Anyway, this is tight. There's no movement on there at all. Worth noting. I wish you could still buy cheap, new, nearly new condition USGI M14 stocks from Fred's Gun Stocks. They still sell them. They used to be like $75. Now if you want to get one that's really, really nice, it's $300 and some dollars. I've never had a trigger pull gauge, so I can't tell you what that weight is, but two-stage GI trigger, and it feels good. That's all I can say. And good reset. So, see you on the range tomorrow. This is more a functions test than anything right now. I will zero it. I'm not going to film the whole zeroing process and whatnot, but it's really not fair to Bula. I found this magazine that I'd forgotten to include with the rifle sale, so it's been loaded for about 5 years. It's a Checkmate magazine, so we'll see if
it's any good.
If I have function issues, it could be the magazine. I'll have to try a different magazine.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, chambered all right.
Right, the top of the X on the right-hand side. And that one was about an inch to the right. below the one before. They're probably 1/8 of an inch between them. Just to the left of that, hit the circle of the X-ring.
I haven't adjusted the sights. I'm hoping I get lucky and it'll be the ballistic curve will cause it to
Okay,
get high in the middle and drop back out there. So here we go.
Hit it. Yeah, lower right. And that one was, let's see, I only see one mark on it.
That's probably a little high.
Yeah. Zoom in a little bit.
Well,
okay, that one was center of the plate on the bottom. Maybe 1 inch up from the bottom, a couple inches up from the bottom. That one hit the dirt below it. That one looked like it hit the dirt above it. But right above it.
well, I heard that impact on the plate.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see a couple of, I can actually see 3 different shots there. I wonder if those things I thought missed were just, oh yeah, that hit the dirt and threw a bunch of dirt clods up on it. And that did the same thing.
So it's low?
Yeah, low. Oh, I heard it. Yeah.
Yep. I can't complain. GI contour, chrome line barrel
Yeah.
at it's about 300 yards.
Yeah.
So on a, what was that, an 8-inch plate,
Yeah.
iron sights.
Yeah.
I'm pleased with it.
Yeah. For that.
Well, back from the range, and your favorite time and mine, gun cleaning. It was a good range trip. This rifle acquitted itself very well. Operation was smooth. It was flawless. In fact, there was you probably saw in the shooting video a couple times, you know, I'd chamber around and say, did that actually chamber something? Yeah, it's forward. I didn't feel or hear the usual kerchunk that I'm used to. I'm going to be, I don't know if I'm going to take the gas cylinder apart. I mean, shouldn't have to perform any maintenance on that for a good while. I only put maybe 160 rounds through it, so it's not an exhausting test, but you know, 7.62x51 isn't cheap anymore. This was some Federal XM80 ball that I tested it with. It seemed like it got smoother and smoother. As you can see now, it's wearing the slotted GI handguard. I did start off with the factory composite that they put on it. Worked great. And after I'd about halfway through, I said, okay, well, it's working fine. Since I'm here, I'll stick this slotted one on and see what it does. I'll keep it on for now, for looks. I did get, toward the very end, I could see a little bit of mirage. So the slots really weren't a good idea. I always thought they got rid of these because they were fragile, more fragile than the other. And it could very well be, but if I had to guess, it had more to do with heat mirage than anything and letting dirt down in the action. And about halfway through, you know, the standard operating rod, the recoil spring guide was working fine. And I thought, okay, well, I've given it a good test. We'll stick that Sadlac National Match one in there just because. And it's a little bit more round, a little bit more polished, so it feels like it gave it a slightly smoother action. It was funny, though. I had a good range day, and I hit more than I missed out to 300. Just shooting at 6-inch, well, 8-inch steel plates. I guess they were 8-inch. I didn't get on video, so we finally we finally recognized that 8-inch silhouette that we couldn't see before, recognized where it was, and started smacking it. And because it was hanging more or less vertically, it was more spectacular when it hit. The other was just laying on the bank, and you could hear it, you could kind of see it, but the misses were more my fault than anything. I had to do a little bit of sight adjustment, but not much. It was pretty well on as received, and I just did a quick down and dirty 0 at 25, and it was basically on. Did a little bit of adjustment there. It didn't even touch the sights. Went straight to 300, and maybe slightly favored low a little bit. I clicked them up a couple, but I'm going to go back out later on sometime and do a proper 0. This was just, I was there with a friend, so I didn't have the time that I would normally have to sit and just tinker with it. But it was funny. I got back from the range, and I was looking it over and thinking about how nicely it had performed, and I thought, yeah, you know, I had seen this young gun enthusiast YouTuber, his name Parabella, I think. He'd done a video on M14s. He had evidently received a bad Bula, and he was soured on them. He had like a bent elevation pinion, and his front side assembly / flash suppressor was loose, and of course then he complained about Springfield Armory giving them guns that had gaps between the gas cylinder lock and the gas cylinder. So he had settled on LRB, loves LRB. That's what he recommends, LRB. I had an LRB. I liked it a lot. It was good. It was a good rifle. I bought it as barreled action and then built it up using GI parts. It was a nice rifle. I regret letting that go like I did one day. I had very little issues out of it. And they probably, from the last pictures I've seen, they might make a slightly more authentic looking receiver in a couple little teeny tiny areas. Like right here. And the fact that they they drill a hole right there in the right leg, which the originals had. And for some reason Bula just leaves out. It's one less step, I guess. But as I was thinking, well, you know, that poor kid, he ended up getting a, you know, one that was either damaged in shipping, maybe. I don't know how you bend the elevation pinion, but you know, he ended up with a damaged one. And I thought, well, you know, speaking of rear sights, I mean, this screw here was loose on mine when I got it, and I had to tighten it up. But fortunately, that's the only issue I've had. Everything's nice and tight, and I reached up here and grabbed my flash hider, and it heard it going tick, 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 tick. I was like, what? You got to be kidding me. And sure enough, it was ever so slightly loose. It had been snug as received, so the only thing I can figure is, you know, I got it barreled good and hot, it cooled off, and this expansion and contraction was enough to expose that it actually needed to be snugged up a little more. In fact, the castle nut that holds it on was, I mean, I could move it a little bit with my fingertips. It's a castle nut, and it's held in place with this dog screw right here in the front. So once the dog screw's set, it's not going anywhere. But it was loose, and fortunately, I had a set of castle nut pliers, M14 castle nut pliers, that had been given to me by a friend when he upgraded. They are, best I can tell, cheap Chinese knockoffs, good for one use. You can see they're already bent. And that little operation I did, made out of the mildest steel on the market, I'm sure. Good for one use. I'll have to replace these with some better ones, perhaps. This isn't something you do in maintenance, is take your flash hider off. So it was loose. I tightened it. It's good and snug now. In my first video, I mentioned that I liked that this op rod was nice and snug, and said that it'll probably loosen up over the shooting, and it did. So that's the drop test. Slightly, ever so slightly snug right there. Still very, very, very nice. Doesn't really rattle. Just good, smooth travel. It's a little easier now to break down. Don't have to use a mallet or anything, but I say as it a little easier to break down now. Let's get that lined up. And as I shoot, that'll get even looser and looser. But I'm not going to show the cleaning on video. This was just kind of an addendum to the last video. Just say, hey, overall, I like it. It performed well. I think they're doing a good job with these. And I promised a forum I was going to get some comparison pics of the receiver side by side with some pics that I took many years ago of the funeral honors detail M14s that were in my National Guard unit, and just see how closely they come to each other.